Honestly, bro, I don't think there's any amount of money in the world, nor any wish that I could have granted, that would convince me to participate in this bullshit. I do not fuck with long distance exercise in the slightest. Like, running is total ass. I can run all day if I'm playing basketball or whatever other sport, but running just for the sake of running, nah, fuck that. And then walking under these conditions, like, can you imagine having to walk 200 miles with mud butt? That is absolutely unhinged behavior. I'm Brandon O. This is Terrorific, and we're chopping up 2025's The Long Walk. Welcome back to the place where it's perpetually spooky season. This episode is brought to you by DFW Landscaping Services, your local experts for complete outdoor solutions in the Dallas-Fort Worth Metroplex. From routine mowing to full front and backyard transformations, they keep your curb appeal sharp and your weekends free. Their team specializes in custom hardscapes, vibrant flower and tree beds, and total lawn care tailored to the North Texas climate. They believe in being built for Texas and designed for living. Reach out to Matt and Cody today for a free quote at 469-389-0333 or visit them online at landscapingservicesdfw.com. That's 469-389-0333. Let's build something great together. So chronologically, the last episode released was the bonus episode that I did with Macabre Mondays Forever Never Yours, where we chopped up Obsession, and you may have noticed that the audio sounded slightly different, aka a little bit shitty on my end. That's because the app we used to record, I didn't realize I had to set my audio input on there separately from my computer. So I checked my computer, it said my input was my microphone, cool. But by the time we started recording, my input was actually my fucking laptop's mic, which is ass. So yeah, lessons learned, onwards and upwards. But shout out Ale and Tom from Macabre Mondays. Thanks for pulling up. If you haven't listened to their podcast yet, you should check it out. It's highly engaging, highly informative. And unlike me, they have high quality audio all the time. So yeah. But now we're back to our regularly scheduled programming. So this season is all about breaking down horror film adaptations of the works of Stephen King. Be sure you're following at Terrorific Podcast on IG, because every Thursday leading up to a new episode, I post a clue to what movie that episode will cover. And if you guess correctly, I will shout you out in that episode. This week's clue was an image of a pedometer, which was a reference to all the steps taken on the long walk and the trackers the participants were given before they began. One guess was oh so close. Someone said The Running Man, which is in that same pedal ballpark. But there were two people who did correctly guess The Long Walk. First, we had a long-time guesser, but I'm pretty sure first-time winner, my fellow Texan as well, Elazar, host of Nightmare Echoes, which is a weekly horror film discussion podcast featuring plot recaps, deep dives, and trope analyses. I made a guest appearance back in July, and along with one of the recurring co-hosts, Margot, we chopped up 2022's influencers. So I'll drop that link down in the show notes. You should definitely give it a listen. It was a fun time. And secondly, we have a multi-time winner, Maggie, one half of Skip or Scream, which is a horror movie recap podcast that asks the question, is the scream worth the stream? And also, congratulations to Skip or Scream, because they are now an award-nominated podcast, by the way. They've been nominated for Creator of the Year and Rising Star, which is a creator who started in 2025, in the upcoming second annual Sacred Crypt Awards from Voices of the Mausoleum. This is a peer-nominated and voted award show celebrating the indie horror community. So congrats and good luck. Oh, and by the way, Terrorific also got nominated in 2 categories for the Sacred Crypt Awards, including Creator of the Year as well. So we got a little competition there, Skipper Scream. And also Best Series for Season 3, when I went through the VHS franchise to rank all of its segments and determine the best one. So if you're new to Terrorific, or you pick and choose which episodes to listen to based on the movies that you're interested in and therefore haven't listened to Season 3, I highly recommend you do so. That is my favorite season by a pretty good margin. Had a lot of fun. There's just so much material in that season or in the VHS franchise that the jokes kind of wrote themselves. And yeah, I was kind of on one in a lot of those episodes. But that's what makes it so fun. You know, this show is all about highlighting the absurd plot devices in these horror films and the crazy situations these characters find themselves in. So yeah, go back, listen to Season 3, start from the beginning, episode 21, Succubussy, still my magnum opus when it comes to episode titles, and enjoy. I'll also include down in the show notes a link to the voting form for the Sacred Crypt Awards, and if you feel so inclined to vote for me, Skipper Scream, or whomever else, please do so. Helps support the community, helps get us exposure, and to keep things growing. There are a lot of categories in there, so if you're unfamiliar with any of the creators who were nominated and are looking for a recommendation, feel free to reach out to me, send me a DM, and I'll get you situated. Voting closes September 3rd, so if you choose to participate, thank you. And I'll also include in the show notes links to the latest episodes from both Nightmare Echoes and Skipper Scream, as well as links to my guest appearances on those pods. So you got a lot of shit to click down there. All right, that concludes the housekeeping, so let's get into the movie. The Long Walk was adapted from Stephen King's 1979 novel of the same name, but it was published under his pseudonym, Richard Bachman. King adopted this pen name for 2 reasons. First, there was a consensus among publishers in the late 70s that an author releasing more than 1 book per year would be oversaturation, and the public wouldn't like it. Secondly, he wanted to know if his success was due to talent or luck. However, he was outed as Bachman sooner than he wanted, so he never really got the answer to that question. While Carrie was the first Stephen King novel published in 1974, The Long Walk was actually the first novel he wrote, having begun it around 1966-1967 during his freshman year at the University of Maine. The film was directed by Francis Lawrence and written by J.T. Malner. Malner also wrote and directed 2023's Strange Darling. Lawrence's other horror directorial credits include his debut feature and highly underrated comic book movie, underrated horror movie, and underrated movie in general, 2005's Constantine, starring Keanu Reeves. Dog, that movie has one of the most chilling lines I've ever heard in my entire life. Whenever Rachel Weisz's character says to Constantine that she doesn't believe in the devil, he responds with, "Well, you should, because he believes in you." I was like, oh my god, dog, that is some scary ass shit. Wow, chills. Francis Lawrence also directed 2007's I Am Legend starring Will Smith, which they're making a sequel to that shit with Michael B. Jordan. I'm not really sure how I feel about that. Everything doesn't need a sequel, especially 20 years later. And on top of that, in their roles, in my opinion, I feel like Michael B. Jordan and Will Smith kind of emote similarly. You know, outside of film, Will Smith emotes a little bit differently. I don't think Michael B. Jordan has gone around slapping the taste out of people's mouths, but I'm having trouble seeing like the different vibe that will be brought to the role with Michael B. Jordan starring in it. But the cast of The Long Walk includes Cooper Hoffman as Ray, the new Black Panther, David Johnson as Pete, Garrett Waring as Stebbins, Toot Naiwat as Art, Charlie Plummer as Gary, Ben Wang as Hank, and Mark Hamill as the Major. It was filmed in Winnipeg on a budget of $20 million and grossed about $63 million at the worldwide box office. It holds an average rating of 3.5 on Letterboxd, and I originally rated it 1 star myself, but let me explain. I don't think I watched it the first time under ideal conditions. Firstly, my expectations, I think, were off. I don't watch trailers, so I had no idea what this is about. I hadn't read the novel, so all I knew was that it was based on a Stephen King story. So I'm like, okay, this is gonna be some scary shit. And it's not scary in the traditional sense, so automatically out of the gate, my expectations were not met. And then on top of that, when I watched it, I was in Chicago on a boys trip. So we went up there back in March to attend the St. Patrick's Day parade and all the parties and shit, see the river dyed green. And boy, let me tell you, shit was a little bit rough the day of the parade. First of all, I have a friend who moved to Chicago a few years ago, and she did warn me/us that it may be a little bit cold still, despite it being March. But I was not prepared for what exactly that meant. So we had purchased tickets for entry to this bar that was riverside so that we could watch the river be dyed green. And this vibe of the place was like a tiki hut kind of theme. So it seemed warm from those vibes, and I assumed there would be an indoor component if it was too cold outside. Well, we get there and there's absolutely no indoors whatsoever. It's literally just like a shack sitting outside, decorated like a tiki hut, and that's where the bar is. So we get there, it's cold as shit. The cold is exacerbated by the wind coming off the river's surface. And just getting there, by the way, was an absolute madhouse. Like downtown Chicago for this fucking parade was nuts. And like the area where the parade was elevated, so you have to like walk down a couple flights of stairs to get down by the river. And literally, like, it was a traffic jam just to get to the stairs. Like, it took us 10 minutes of waiting in line just to be able to walk down the stairs. Absolutely nuts. But when we finally get down there, we get to the hut, and again, it's cold as shit. So we're like, all right, let's just buy a couple drinks that'll warm us up real fast. We get in line. We were literally in line for a fucking hour, bro. An hour at like 8:30, 9 a.m. It's like 25 degrees outside. You know, it's probably like 12 with the wind chill. Absolutely horrible. Just standing there freezing, teeth chattering, all this shit. Finally get our drinks though, pound it real quick, order a little fucking personal size pizza because that's how long we were in line. We had gotten hungry. And then we started our long walk to meet up with our friend at the next spot. And while we're walking there, it starts snowing on us, dog. I'm like, what the fuck is this bullshit? It is like March 17th or March 14th, whatever the fucking date was. In Texas, March 14th, it's like 90 degrees outside. Here I am in 25 degrees and fucking snow. I'm not built for that shit, dog. However, the one redeeming aspect of this entire ordeal was that while we were walking through downtown, seeing this snowfall with the backdrop of all these big ass, tall ass skyscrapers was like something out of a movie. Highly cinematic and, dare I say, beautiful. But yeah, so after spending hours in this cold weather, we ended the night at this speakeasy bar. And I'm dressed in winter clothes. There's only so much I can take off. It's hella hot in there, so I'm sweating my balls off. I ordered a basic ass margarita, and that shit cost $20 fucking dollars, bro. And I can't stand clubs, and this speakeasy was a club. It's way too loud, way too packed. People are too close to me. I'm literally posting up against the wall, just like mean mugging everybody. Like, I was miserable by that point. So by the time I went home, or we went back to the Airbnb, went to bed, woke up the next day, we're all tired and shit. So we just decided to pop on a movie. So I think all my negative feelings from the day before bled over into my watching experience of The Long Walk. So I was just like, man, fuck this movie. This shit is ass. It's not even scary. Are these two dudes going to kiss already or just going to flirt the whole fucking time? Like, I was upset. Did not like it. But now, after rewatching it, I think I would change my rating to like a 2.5 or a 3, somewhere in that range. I still thought it was a little bit corny. I'm still not a fan of the ending, but it wasn't as bad as it was initially. So yeah, it's interesting to think about like how much our headspace or our mental load at the time can influence how we view something. Okay, so The Long Walk is set in a dystopian 1970s. The film opens with getting the exposition out of the way immediately. It shows the words of a letter like printed over a black screen. And it explains that the film's protagonist, Ray, his voluntary application to participate in The Long Walk was accepted via a lottery system. He'll be representing his state as a symbol of hope in these economically desperate times, and the entire nation will be watching the live broadcast. Winning The Long Walk will get him unimaginable riches and a single wish. And he must report to the starting line on May 1st by 8 a.m. And May 1st is the 19th anniversary of a great civil war that tore the nation apart and threw it into economic disarray and ruin. Everybody's broke as hell. Ray's mom, Jenny, drives him to the starting line and she tries to talk him out of participating, but the deadline to withdraw already passed the day before, so his mind is made up. He is committed. And as they hug each other goodbye, she leaves him with a little bag of oatmeal chocolate chip cookies to take with him. And I gotta ask you, what is your power ranking of cookies? Because for me, number one is easily oatmeal chocolate chip. That is an elite cookie. Elite. Number two, I'd probably go maybe a regular chocolate chip, like a warm, soft chocolate chip that's like got that gooey shit in the middle. Shit, just thinking about it right now, dog. I'm about to go make me some fucking cookies. Number three would be something with peanut butter involved. If there's like a peanut butter chocolate chip, I feel like I had that at some point before, and that shit was also delicious. But yeah, oatmeal chocolate chip, when done properly, nothing is touching that. But while checking in for the walk, Ray meets a fellow contestant named Pete, and their relationship really is central to the entire film. They bond instantly. Definitely seems like Cupid sniped both of these boys. They start checking out the rest of the competition and their body compositions. Pete tells Ray that heavier guys get tired more quickly, and he weighs 1 pound less than Ray. They then notice one other dude who's in tip-top shape, and he introduces himself as Stebbins whenever Ray asks. And then this starts other dudes to begin introducing themselves as well. This is when we meet Hank and Art. Art says he's here to walk and maybe make some friends. Alright, this dude's head does not seem to be in the game. I'm pretty sure he's gonna be fucking cooked. Like, how would you approach this situation? I may be jumping ahead a little bit here, but the entire premise of this long walk is that there can only be one winner. There's 50 contestants, one winner. It's a zero-sum game. If you win, that means literally 49 other people have died. So to volunteer for this event and then say that one of your main goals is to make friends, why would you sign up for something that has a 98% chance of death just to make friends? Like, don't you have friends at home, bro? That's crazy work. But even if Art doesn't have any friends at home, I'm sure attempting to make friends at home comes with a lower chance of death than 98%. I know that if I were in this hypothetical scenario, I mean, first of all, I wouldn't even put my name in the lottery to begin with, but assuming I did and assuming I got selected, I'm definitely not trying to make friends. Like, psychologically, I can understand like having a little bit of fellowship or whatever could help alleviate some of the stresses on this long ass journey. But at the same time, knowing that none of you are going to be together ever again because 49 of you will be dead at least, it's like, what's the point exactly of trying to actually be friends? Like, you can be acquaintances, like coworkers type of vibes, you know, but to actually bond with people on a death walk, I don't understand that logic. A military vehicle then pulls up and it's carrying the major, who is the dude who runs the long walk. A couple guys stand up when he pulls up and he tells them to sit and keep hint number 13 in mind, which according to the rulebook means to conserve energy whenever possible. The major does roll call to pass out tags to all the participants, which assigns them their numbers. Watches are also passed out to track distance and speed. He starts giving a speech about the reason for the long walk. He says the nation is plagued by an epidemic of laziness, and this walk is somehow the solution. Apparently, at the end of these events, production around the country spikes, which then raises its gross national product as it tries to return to being number one in the world. And I wonder, is this like a subtle shot at GLP-1s? I do not claim to be an expert on how GLP-1s work or whatever. My understanding is that they are best, or they're most effective when also paired with like good eating habits and exercise, but you can still lose weight without dieting and exercising, right? Because GLP-1s basically just suppress your appetite. So I'm fairly certain there are numerous people who just take the shot to lose weight and don't care about anything else, you know, so they lose muscle tone and all that good stuff. So that could be viewed as an epidemic of laziness in that scenario. You know, if your whole goal is just to lose weight and not necessarily to be healthy, and you're taking this medication as a fast track to accomplish that goal, that sounds a whole lot like taking a shortcut, respectfully. And also that line about how production spikes at the end of these long walks, that's another reason why I think that this is a reference to like this weight loss obsession or whatever terminology you want to attach to it. It's like the long walk takes place on the 1st of the month, and there's another event that takes place on the 1st of a month that then leads to a spike in production, and that's New Year's Day. Every year on January 1st, tons of people make a New Year's resolution to be healthier, to work out more, new year, new me, all that kind of shit. And gym memberships skyrocket for that first month. And then they taper off back to, you know, normal levels because it's very hard to maintain the commitment and the dedication to working out and going to the gym regularly and dieting regularly. And then the cycle repeats itself the following year, just like the long walk does. And I think it's interesting that none of the kids who were apparently selected by a random lottery were overweight. So I don't know, but to me, it seems like the major, again, the person who is in charge of running this whole thing, may be a little bit fat phobic. But he goes on to explain the rules of the long walk are as follows. Walk until there is only one participant left. Everyone must maintain a speed of at least 3 miles per hour. Falling below this threshold results in a warning. If they can't make speed again within 10 seconds, they get a second warning. 3 warnings results in them, quote unquote, getting their ticket, aka a bullet to the face. Big yikes. Walking for 1 hour above the threshold erases 1 warning, but stepping off the pavement results in getting a ticket without warning. There's no finish line, just the last man standing wins. The major gives some rah 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 speech to hype everybody up, which, if that were me and I had a 98% chance of dying, there's absolutely no word that could be uttered from a human being that would get me excited and hyped up for that shit. Crazy work. But the walk begins and the guys are escorted by an armed military convoy. There's a couple of Humvees and a tank, and the tank is also equipped with a camera for the live broadcast. Ray makes a comment about the lack of other people on the road, and another dude, Gary. Bro, it's been a while since we've had a Gary in one of these movies, and if VHS taught me anything, it's that people named Gary in horror films are on one, and this Gary is no exception. But Gary says that the major doesn't allow spectators until the final stretch other than the locals of the towns they pass through. And as they pass by a cop standing on the side of the road who is saluting them, Gary flips him the double bird before spitting at his feet. He apparently doesn't buy into that whole Blue Lives Matter thing. Meanwhile, Mr. Minimal Body Fat Stebbins deliberately slows his pace in order to receive a warning, and Hank is a total dick rider, bro. While Pete and Ray are like, yo, what the fuck? Why are you doing that already? Hank's like, nah, guys, that's super smart to do that while he's still fresh. Now he has an idea of like what the leeway is, how long or how much runway you have for a warning and all that stuff. And he can easily walk another hour to have that warning erased. And Hank's not wrong by any means. However, in a competition where only one person can win, if that were me, I am not gassing up anybody at all. I'm talking mad shit. I'm being like, hey, Stebbins, you a dumbass motherfucker, bro. Go ahead and pick up 2 more warnings while you're at it. You know? I'm not going to be out here being his cheerleader. No, you are the ops. You suck. Hank has been chewing a piece of gum until he takes it out of his mouth and slips it into his pocket, which, yuck. And the gang comments on how nasty that is. Hank responds by saying that gum isn't biodegradable, so he doesn't want to litter. Ray then asks if he's aware that this whole road is litter. And I wonder if this is like some sort of political illusion. I interpreted this statement as saying that, you know, one vote doesn't really matter. Hank is doing his part to keep the world clean or keep the road clean. And Ray points out that, okay, you can do that, but there's still a whole bunch of other trash out there. So on one hand, that's true. One person's vote is not really going to sway an election in most instances, you know, at a national level at least. Locally, of course, the margins can be razor thin. But as I'm sure you're aware, the issue arises when lots of people all think that their one vote doesn't matter. So instead of one vote not being cast, we have 1 million votes not being cast. This disillusionment definitely helps keep shitty people in power. And it's frustrating. I have a friend of mine, a close friend of mine, who buys into this mindset wholeheartedly. He does not think voting actually does anything, and as a result, he has literally never voted in any election in his entire life. And we've had multiple conversations about this because he'll complain about certain laws in Texas that have been passed, or, you know, laws that weren't able to be passed because of our current political leaders. And I'm like, bro, how are you complaining when you don't even vote? And he's like, whoa, shit don't even matter. I'm like, dog, it does though, because it's not just you who thinks like that. If you were to tell your other friends who also don't vote that voting matters, then maybe you can convince your pod of 5 to all vote. And then those people can then talk to their other friends, and it just spreads from there. It all starts with one person making the decision to be like, hey, my shit matters. And then from there, it spreads. But if you're automatically coming at it with this cynical mindset, guess what? We're all fucked. So my dude, if you're listening, and I think you may be, the midterms are coming up in November. Early voting is even before then. Get your ass to the poll and handle business. Do your part. But anyway, Gary stops walking because he has a rock in his shoe, and he picks up 3 warnings getting it all situated. He claims he's a big brain because he bought himself time to rest, and it's all part of his plan. Hank says this plan and the stuff that comes out of his asshole bear a suspicious resemblance. That is a top-notch roast. I may need to steal that in the future. Hank is the comic relief of the movie, so we all know what that means. Bro is fucking cooked. Ray, Pete, Art, and Hank start talking about the winner's prize money, and Ray gets all philosophical. He says neither the walk nor the money really matter. He argues that there's an illusion of choice. Putting your name into the walk's lottery is voluntary, yet every boy does it because they're all so desperate to escape this extreme poverty. If there's only one exit, everyone is going to head straight for it. And he has a point. I mean, this walk seems to be just another method of control. If people can spend a year suffering because at the end of that year or the following year, I guess, they know that they have at least a slim chance to win the prize money, have their wish granted, and get their family raised up out of poverty, they may be less inclined to revolt and riot and all that stuff. It keeps the masses docile despite their horrible conditions because you're dangling this little carrot in front of their face that, hey, you're just patient, if you're a good boy, you'll have a chance at eating this thing. And as if to drive the point home just how desperate everyone is, there's another dude named Curly. When he was introduced before the walk started, they asked him how old he was. He said he was 18, and everyone's like, bro, you're clearly fucking lying. You can't be a day over 16. But here he is, despite lying on his application, he's doing the walk and he catches a Charlie horse. Ray and Pete try to help him, but he can't power through and collapses to the ground. And he ends up getting his ticket, aka a bullet through the back of his head that exits through his jaw. Big yikes. But so much for the walk not mattering, huh, Ray? Cause dude was shook when he saw this shit. When he saw a dude's fucking jaw just flapping in the breeze, he was like, oh, damn. All right. I guess, I guess there are some actual consequences to this shit. And this is the moment, like 20 plus minutes into the film, when the title card finally appears. And I think this is supposed to symbolize that the walk doesn't truly begin until the first casualty. And Pete's lucky that he wasn't the second casualty because he turns around and starts walking backwards because he has to pee, and he just whips it out and starts spraying at the people behind him. I mean, he gives them like a little bit of a warning, I guess, but he still like splashes them. Someone's like, oh shit, I got on my shoes, bro, what the fuck? And I feel like this is grounds for being tripped at the very least. Like that is so uncalled for. You could just move to the side of the road, to the edge, and, relieve yourself there. You don't need to just like piss on people, dog. That's so disrespectful. So disrespectful. If someone pissed on me while we're in this life or death walk, I gotta tell you, I would probably crash out. Like, because of this, I now have to walk an undetermined number of miles with a stranger's piss on my feet. Absolutely not. I'm immediately sticking my foot out and tripping this dude. He'll pick up a warning, and then he'll know not to do that shit again. But Ray starts getting tired, so Pete gives him a pep talk to keep his head in the game. He says not to think about making it all the way to the end, but rather to think about making it to the next moment. And this is that shit I'm talking about, bro. This is why I gave it a 1 the first time I watched it, because this is so corny. I just can't deal with corniness. Like, if I'm out here walking 100 miles straight or whatever it is, and I'm struggling, trying not to quit because I know that if I quit, I'm going to get my head blown off. And someone next to me says, Hey bro, just try to make it to our next moment. Bitch, respectfully, shut your ass up. I'm not trying to hear all that. But Pete's not done being corny just yet. He declares the two of them plus Art and Hank as the four musketeers. They should all work together to keep walking until they're the final four left. He says that a short friendship is better than no friendship. Gary overhears all this and says they sound like, quote, a bunch of queers, which from his tone is definitely bigoted and not cool at all. But at the same time, the relationship between Pete and Ray does not seem very platonic. This is giving really big dystopian Brokeback Mountain vibes. The only difference is they don't have time to spit in their hands in a tent. and actually, what's the word I'm looking for? Consummate the relationship. So it's just like the long walk of longing glances. Just a few minutes before this exchange, Pete had pulled out a pack of cigarettes and only offered one to Ray, nobody else. He then basically serenaded Ray with some language about dancing on the moon and stars or some shit. And Ray even asked if he was a poet. There's been a general tension between the two of them, but they kind of get cock-blocked when another contestant has the audacity to start seizing and collapses on the ground, which then results in him getting his ticket. Next time, maybe try reading the room there, buddy. But no worries, the good vibes return shortly afterwards because Pete, apparently done with being a poet, says that if he wins this whole thing, he's gonna fuck till his dick turns blue. Which, ew, that is very descriptive. But he's not done there because he also says he's never been as horny in his entire life as he is right at this minute. He tells Ray that he could even get horny for him if he didn't smell, this is a direct quote here, if he didn't smell like his mom's asshole. My guy. What? The fact that he was ever confused for a poet is interesting. Wow. I could get horny for you, bro, if you didn't smell like my mom's asshole. I don't even know what to do with that. I don't even know where to begin unpacking that. But the craziest thing is no one's even like, what the fuck, Pete? That's some wild shit. You were out of pocket for that. They just like laugh, you know? I guess Pete's gonna be Pete. They just roll with it. I mean, they've known this guy for like 8 hours. And it's like, well, that's Pete for you. All right, talking about mom assholes and blue dicks. Okay. Hank's level of amusement, however, is not quite as high as it used to be because he keeps having an issue that he refers to as jelly leg. And while he's trying to get his leg like shaken out or whatever, he ends up dropping his food ration for the day like a total noob. But no worries because Hero Ray swoops in to save the day, gives him his own ration, and earns himself a very sweet, tender look of admiration from Pete. Shout out to good-heartedness, I guess, but literally all but one of you is going to die at the end of this thing, so sharing rations is either delaying the inevitable, increasing your own odds of dying, or both. Gary, on the other hand, resorts to psychological warfare. He targets a kid named Rank and talks shit about his name being Rank to begin with, and then talks shit about his mom giving out blowjob coupons or something along those lines, and Rank ends up swinging at him and misses badly. And this fucking guy either doesn't or is unable to brace his fall, so he slides on the concrete and gets this nasty road rash all on his face. And then he's unable to get up in time, so he ends up getting his ticket. And everyone blames Gary. They call him a murderer, and he's shook. He starts hitting himself in the head and all this shit. His mental health is quickly fraying. But there's always someone who has it worse, and that person is contestant number 45, who gets the shits, and he keeps stopping to pull his pants down so he doesn't have to shit in his pants. And eventually he gets enough warnings from just shitting everywhere that he gets his ticket. Bro, what a fucking catch-22. Either you're going to be forced to walk an undeterminable remaining number of miles with shit in your pants. Plus, you know the shit's gonna dry up, so eventually you're gonna have an itchy asshole on top of that, which sounds like torture. Or you try to save your pants, drop them, shit on the ground, but you can't pull them up fast enough, and you get shot in the fucking face. My goodness, that is absolutely diabolical work. But this also does seem to be another political reference, because it's contestant number 45 who's having these gastrointestinal issues, and the person currently occupying the White House, who was the 45th president, also seems to struggle with some bowel related issues, you know. So President Poopy Pants, this seems to be about him. If only we had contestant number 47 fall asleep and fart himself awake, then we could remove all doubt and know exactly who this was supposed to be referencing. Once nighttime rolls around, Ray falls asleep while walking and dreams of his mom. He makes the mistake of sharing this with the group, which naturally cues up a bunch of MILF jokes. Pete then asks if Ray has a girlfriend, and he says he did, but he ended things before the walk began. Ray asks if Pete has a girl, and he pauses, makes very strong eye contact, and says no, I don't. And this moment is so heavily charged with sexual tension that it causes Ray to actually slow down and pick up a warning. And just in case the implication regarding Pete's sexuality wasn't clear, Gary then pipes up promptly behind them, asking if Ray is dreaming about having Pete's dick in his mouth. Wow. Leave it to Gary to ruin the moment. Ray ends up stumbling, which causes him to pick up a third warning, and then he lashes out at Pete, maybe out of delirium caused by lack of sleep, or maybe out of insecurity/confusion related to his own burgeoning feelings for Pete's BBC. Either way, he yells at Pete to stop pretending that he doesn't want him to get his ticket and that he's just like everyone else. Ouch. The group hits a steep stretch uphill and bodies start dropping like crazy. Maybe about a dozen or so catch bullets. Ray slows and he has a soldier's gun pointed at the back of his head before Pete swoops in all heroically, comes up and links arms with him to keep him moving. And Ray's like, oh, okay, my bad for what I said earlier. I didn't mean it. So now they have made up. Yay. Now on day 2, there are only about 18 contestants left and morale is hella low. Ray says he doesn't think he'll win, but he has a particular reason for why he has to win. Pete says he realized last night that he doesn't think he'll win either because he's not built for this shit. He says it's not about who can physically last the longest, it's about who has a certain switch in their brain they can turn on to do the impossible. He likens it to mothers lifting cars to save their kids. But a glimmer of hope still exists, so they start talking about what they would wish for if they were to win. Art wants a rocket so it can fly him to the moon. Apparently a past winner asked for a pet elephant, and Hank says he wants 10 naked ladies. All of the above are some dumbass wishes, bro. What the fuck you gonna do on the moon there, Art? Alright, and you're living in a country whose economic resources are so thinly stretched / non-existent that they force children to walk in a death competition just to keep national hope somewhat alive. Yeah, there's absolutely no chance bro's going to the moon. And then a fucking pet elephant. If I had to guess, I would imagine that the military powers that be would probably only provide exactly what you wish for. So a pet elephant. So you're not getting any food with that shit. How do you transport it back to the crib? Yeah, that thing was cooked after about a week. I'm sure of it. And Hank's 10 naked ladies, someone in the group pointed out the fact that with the prize money he would get along with the wish, he could just use some of that to encourage 10 ladies to get naked for him. Probably more than 10. Absolute wastes of a wish. But Pete, on the other hand, has a more mature wish. He would want all future walks to have 2 winners in order to give participants hope that their friends might survive too. Ray, however, won't share his wish because he doesn't want to jinx it. He just says he wants his wish to enact change and maybe end the walk altogether. If you were to win the long walk, what would your wish be? I think mine might be something like being able to receive like passage to another country that didn't tear itself apart in the Civil War and isn't forcing kids to compete in this death walk. You know, that might be nice. And then I get the prize money on top of that. So yeah, just be able to restart, build a new life out of poverty and out of civil unrest. But do you know what else causes unrest? Bubble guts, and Art is afflicted with it. He has to stop to take a shit, picks up a couple of warnings, but he's able to pinch it off and get moving again. He says most guys shit once a week, but he's the once a day type. Bruh. Who is shitting only 1 time per week? That is crazy. Get some fiber, dog. Come on now. But all this talk about shitting on the ground reminds me of a story from when I was a kid. So I was probably like in 1st or 2nd grade, and me and my friends in the neighborhood were playing basketball outside in our friend's driveway. And one of the kids, he stops and he's like, "Hey guys, I gotta go boo-boo." And we're like, "Okay, then like just hold it, bro. We're almost done with the game." He's like, "Nah, I can't hold it." So we're like, "All right, then just go to your house and boo-boo." He's like, "I can't make it." And then before we can say anything else, this dude pulls down his pants, pops a squat, and starts pushing. And we're like, "Yo, what are you doing, bro?" Like, we're young, but we're old enough to know better. And like, we see it poke out, a little prairie dog action, and he's about to drop it before the friend's house it was, his older brother came outside and is like, "Yo, what are you doing, bro? Come inside and use the toilet." And he was like, "Oh, okay." And he's just like, boop, sucks it back up, goes inside, drops it, and then comes back out, and we keep on playing. Just absolute madness. Kids, man, they do the darndest things. But anyway, Pete and Ray get a moment alone, and that allows Ray to open up about his past. He explains that his dad was kind of a rebel who showed him banned materials like books, music, etc. And Mans thought he was being careful until the military busted down the front door one night, dragged him out into the street, and made him kneel before the major. The major gave him a choice to swear allegiance to the state or to die. So he wanted him to set the right example for his son. And bro said, "Here's my example. Give me death, bitch." And he caught a bullet right in front of Ray and his mom. So Ray's wish is that if he were to win, he would ask for a carbine rifle, which he would then use to kill the major right there on the spot. Ray idolizes his dad, and Pete points out, correctly in my opinion, that Ray's dad chose to leave his family behind for his principles or pride or both. And Pete basically tells Ray that his plan is stupid and suicidal and selfish, and they have another cute bonding moment as Ray starts to reconsider his options. Now, I'm all for standing on business when it comes to upholding one's principles or beliefs, but that does come with an asterisk. Because if you're a person who has other people who rely upon you, then I don't think martyrdom should be an option for you. To do so is inherently selfish, and it doesn't consider all of the fallout that can come from that the people who rely on you, or in this case, family, wife and kid, would have to deal with. So for Ray's dad to be like, okay, this is my moment to show an example to Ray of, it's okay to die for what you believe in or whatever. Cool, I guess. But at the same time, you're also like fucking him up for life because he's watching his dad be murdered in front of his eyes. And that's something he has to carry with him to then volunteer to do this death walk with the sole purpose to seek revenge for that moment, thus repeating the same choices that his father made, once again leaving his mom, Jenny, flapping in the breeze. So Pete calling him out puts Ray on the path to realizing and understanding and accepting all of this. But in the meantime, while he works on that, things ratchet up in intensity. So as they continue the walk, one kid tries to climb up the front of the tank in the convoy. The soldiers knock him down, which leads to him being run over by the tank. Unfortunately, he doesn't die right away though, so the soldiers still give him his warnings as he screams in agony and then give him his ticket. What a brutal way to go out, my goodness. Another kid then strips down into his underwear and tries to sprint off into the grassy median off the side of the road, and he gets gunned down immediately. Hank reaches total exhaustion around mile 200 or so, and he walks at the soldiers in an attempt to grab one of their rifles, but they shoot him in the gut. However, they don't kill him. Stebbins says they deliberately shot him in the gut in order to let him bleed out as a means of discouraging anyone else from trying something similar. That is tough. Art runs over to him and almost gets himself killed in the process too. Ray has to grab him and make him start moving again. At this point, it's revealed that Hank has a wife, and everyone makes a pact to help her out if they win. And respectfully, my question here is, why though? Everyone would be leaving behind some loved ones if they were to get their ticket. So why are they singling out Hank's widow specifically? The only thing I could think of is they feel badly and they want to give her some pity money because Hank's wish would have been to have 10 naked ladies dote upon him. However, they don't ask Gary to join the pact, and this hurts his feelings and he starts to crack. The guilt from getting that other kid killed earlier spills over, and eventually he stops in the road and stabs himself in the neck with a knife or something. Sheesh. But as always, if you or anyone you know is struggling with thoughts of self-harm or suicide, please call or text 988 ASAP. Speak with someone. They can give you some help. You are not alone, and you do not have to suffer in silence. The walk's path makes its way through Ray's hometown at mile 286, and everyone is in tough shape. The bottom of one of Ray's shoes falls off, so he has to remove both since being off balance would make walking even harder. He passes his mom as she spectates, and this is when he realizes that he did the same thing Pete said his dad did. He chose to make himself a martyr instead of being there for his family. He runs over and he's hugging her and he's apologizing to her, saying that now he realizes he made a mistake. And he picks up a couple of warnings and she's like, motherfucker, keep going. It's too late now. I don't want to see you get shot in your face. And Pete has to drag him away to get him moving again. Pete then tells Ray his life story. His parents died in the war when he was a kid, and his abusive drunk uncle took him in until he died in a pool of his own vomit when Pete was 10. Mans then started running the streets, getting into all kinds of trouble until one day he picked a fight with the wrong dude and got himself carved up by a hunting knife. So if he were to win, he wants to help other orphans like him. But this is all part of Pete's speech to convince Ray to not choose revenge if he wins. Just go home to his mom and keep living. Now down to the final five: Ray, Pete, Art, Collie, and Stebbins. They've been walking for 5 days, so Stebbins says it's time they all agree to stop helping each other from this point forward. Pete is resistant until Ray agrees and says he can't keep saving him. Despite all these crazy circumstances that are surrounding them, Pete and Ray had kind of managed to construct this fantasy world where it's like, you know, we have each other, we can bond, we can flirt, make eyes at each other, all that stuff. Just trying to avoid the unavoidable truth that one or both of them will eventually die. And I think that kind of ties into a central theme of this film in general, and that's hope. Like, in the face of adversity, with all the odds stacked against you, can you manage to still find something to be hopeful for that allows you to keep putting one foot in front of the other? But the other side of that coin is that sometimes, no matter how much you want something or how much you hope something can be possible, sometimes it's just impossible. Collie's hope runs out. He cracks, says fuck it, and he charges a soldier. He manages to take his rifle, shoots and kills him, but then in the process he takes a gut shot from another soldier, since again their directive is to let folks bleed out whenever they buck up like that. But Collie uses the gun he stole to end it on his own terms. Art is also in really bad shape. His nose won't stop bleeding, and Stebbins recognizes that he's hemorrhaging internally. He's cooked, but he did make the friends that he wanted, so he stops walking and gets his ticket. Now at mile 326, they're in the home stretch. There are only 3 walkers left: Ray, Pete, and Stebbins. Stebbins reveals his motivations for why he volunteered for the walk. He is the Major's bastard son, one of dozens. His wish would have been to be invited to the Major's home for some tea, which is both heartbreaking and weak as hell. Not to mention insulting to Stebbins' mother. It's like, alright, you know, she raised him for his entire life, but he would rather risk a 98% chance of death to have tea with his biological dad. Okay. But his body is failing him. He's been sick and coughing for miles and miles now, and he tells Ray and Pete that he can feel his lungs beginning to fill with fluid. So he stops walking and gets his ticket, but not before telling Ray and Pete that when there are only 2 walkers left, the Major allows crowds and spectators to walk alongside the participants because it makes more of a spectacle for when the final kill comes from the Major himself. Now near the end at mile 331, Ray and Pete are walking through the rain, making hella strong eye contact, and it's like, bro, please just kiss already. Just get it over with. This is your last chance. But no, they just want to live in this will they won't they dynamic forever. So Pete stops and kneels down to give Ray the win, but he's like, nah baby, keep walking with me please. Ray gently pushes Pete ahead of him so he doesn't notice when he stops, and he's all out of warning, so he gets shot in the gut and tells Pete that he loves him. Soldiers pull Pete away as the Major approaches Ray and shoots him in the dome. Fireworks start going off and the crowd starts singing America the Beautiful in celebration of the new champ, Pete, while he bawls his eyes out over Ray's death. It's a crazy juxtaposition. The Major then asks Pete what his wish is, and he switches up, bro. He goes with Ray's wish. He says he wants a carbine. And the Major's like, okay, sure, we'll get you one, son. He's like, no, I want the one right there that this soldier is holding. And the soldier looks at the Major like, is this cool? And he's like, yeah, go ahead and give it to him. He's not going to do anything because he's won too much. The Major doesn't realize, however, that Pete has actually just lost everything, his newfound love. So he points the gun at the Major and says, "This is for Ray," before pulling the trigger. Then he turns and walks off. The street is now completely empty and silent as the movie ends. And bro, I was not a fan of this ending. When I first watched it, I'm like, what the fuck? That's how it ends, just with this dude walking off into the distance? That shit was anticlimactic as hell. But then on the second watch, I was like, oh, okay, so I guess this is supposed to mean that he died. You know, he probably got lit up by the soldiers after killing the Major, so he's walking off into the afterlife, which isn't much better because he spent all that time trying to talk Ray out of basically throwing his life away for revenge, only to end up doing the exact same thing. And this comes after the fact that Ray sacrificed himself to save Pete. So he let Ray die for no reason. And I guess if I try to look at this from a romantic perspective, they both died behaving in the manner that the other person was like projecting or whatever. They adopted each other's psyche, I guess, which in a sense, I suppose, is tragically romantic, but also fucking dumb because they had all these plans for like helping orphans. That went up in smoke. They wanted to help out Hank's widow. That's cooked. And like, what exactly was the purpose of all this? Plus, they didn't even kiss, bro. They walked for 331 miles with blue balls, and when the time finally came to either shit or get off the pot, they fumbled. Madness. So I guess I have two final takeaways from this film. Number one, hope apparently ultimately leads to disappointment, which is cynical as hell. But also, it's not about love over hate or love over vengeance. It's about love over everything. Love over logic. Love over the understanding that this person that you have grown feelings for just sacrificed themselves to save you. So it's probably not very prudent to then immediately throw your life away too. But hey, the power of love compels us to do some crazy ass shit. And you know what? Maybe the kid who wished for the pet elephant had it right all along. Cut out all the noise, all the feelings, all the practicality of things. Just go based off of vibes. And that's all for me. I'm out of here. Please rate, review, and subscribe on whatever platform you're listening on. All those things help the show continue to grow, to be exposed to a new audience, because who wouldn't want to listen to stories about first graders trying to shit outdoors? I'll see you in 2 weeks for the penultimate episode of season 4, but in the meantime, remember, always keep it spooky.